Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Justin and this is Dad Discovers, where I'm learning about the world through YouTube. Today I'm checking out a video titled The One Difference in Australian Culture That Makes All the Difference. So let's jump in and see what this is all about.
When I took my first trip to Australia last year, I was literally shocked by every aspect of life in Australia, as people always tell me that there's no place like Australia, and frankly, I never knew what it meant until now. So today, I'm going to share with you the one difference about Australia that nobody talks about, but makes all the difference, as well as my biggest culture shock as an American in Australia for the very first time.
And it's definitely not what you think, so let's jump into the video right now.
And I'll break down every aspect of Australia that makes the people and the place special, and at the end, you'll finally find out what that one true difference is. And the first thing is actually the one thing that all the other nations are doing wrong, but Australia somehow managed to make it work, and that is they'll adjust the international food to fit the locals, so you can eat anywhere with food from all over the world. In Australia, you will get the utmost authentic taste, which I never seen it done in any nation. And this is
Yeah, I feel like here, we have, authentic foods from other countries, but I feel like they become Americanized. Like even when we go to the Chinese takeout, I feel like that's probably not the same type of Chinese food that you would get if you went to China. I feel like all of our food is like dumbed down for lack of better words, to be more Americanized.
coming from someone who traveled the world only to be surprised by how the best Indian, Japanese, and Chinese food can actually be found in Australia. When I came to Brisbane for the first time, I asked the locals, where do I find the best local food? And they literally told me to eat anywhere I want because of this very reason. And that also means that after your trip to Australia, your taste for good food might be permanently increased, and you might enjoy the food outside of Australia a lot less, so that could be a downside.
And from all the comments that I'm reading, the only problem that the locals are having would be Mexican food, with many complaining they hardly taste like the one in Mexico or America, even though the owners are Mexican, but everything else is good.
But what is even better than that is the next thing on the list, and the perfect time to subscribe to this channel if you love the video so far, because you're all my fellow mates, and that is the next one we're going to talk about. The mateship and the sense of community only found in Australia. Because when I first got here, I was surprised to be called a mate left and right, because back in America, people rarely call one another anything unless you're a good friend. But after a few weeks, I got used to it and will totally miss it when going back to America. Because there's
Yeah, here you don't really see that at all. You'll have small talk like, "Hey, how's it going?" or uh, "Oh, it's warm out here today," or "Oh, this rain," but never walk up and like, "Hey, friend." No.
There's a real sense of equality between everyone, and if you're willing to be humble, be funny from time to time, and make friends, they will want to be your friends and even help you when
Dang, this food looks really good. Really good. This is making me hungry.
you need it. And last but not least, Australia is one of the only places where you can sit in the front seat of the taxi without being awkward. I never tried that, but feel free to do it yourself.
There's a famous saying in Australia that says, we don't care what you do or who you are, but if you're being egotistical, nobody will tolerate that, because everyone is just as good as anyone else.
But the next one is kind of one some of you might have a problem with, and that is the laid-back attitude and everyone being chilled in Australia. Now, why did I say that some of you may not like this? Because if you're used to the hustle culture and always being
Yeah, here it's all about, hustle, hustle, hustle. I would love, absolutely love a laid back culture, a laid back lifestyle. Ugh. I crave that in life.
being busy even if you don't have to, like the way we live in America where everyone you know is always working and nobody has time for their family, you will find this relaxed, enjoying every moment of life, and going to the beach for a walk kind of culture to be inefficient and for some of you, maybe a waste of time. But this is why so many people love Australia, because it's okay to relax and slow down, it's okay to not do anything in particular during weekends and holidays, and it's okay to enjoy living your life. And if there's there's one thing I hope Americans can learn from Australia, then this one would be on the top of my list.
Also, maybe it's because of this one reason. Australia is safer than even the safest countries like Japan in my personal opinion, with many of my Australian friends saying they forgot to lock the door multiple times, but no one ever broke in, which sadly I can never say the same for America.
Yeah, not anymore. It used to be that way. I remember when I was a kid, sometimes like we would never lock the door. And sometimes we would sleep with the door, like the main door open, but we would have the storm door there, but that's still just, a thin door, uh, just to keep the bugs out. But we never worried about, anything like today. But you definitely can't do this today. Not even like out in the country. It's just too many crazy people.
But what I can also never say the same about America is the next one on the list, and that is the way Aussies love and care for their environment. Since going outdoors is such an essential part of Australian culture, it makes sense for there to be a level of care for the nature. For example, in other coastal cities in, let's say, Vietnam and Malaysia, it's quite common to see rubbish all over the beach, but in Australia, that's rarely the case. And also the wildlife you see is kind of doing their own thing, because the locals know what to and not to do. A recent survey even found that more Australians want actions to protect the nature than ever before, because everyone relies on the nature for clean water and air and the sweet tourist money. But I still see some tourists tossing away rubbish on the street, and hopefully if you're watching this, you can stop doing that from now on.
This may sound like a joke, but remember when you go to a supermarket like Costco, they would give you a really long receipt? One time a guy dropped his receipt and it got blown away by the wind, and he literally apologized to everyone because he thought he was littering.
But you all know how windy it can get, and I'm sure he's forgiven because of the next thing on the list, and that is love, especially the love Aussies have for their nation. And you might think to yourself, isn't that just patriotism? Like the same one you see in America or many Southeast Asian countries where they sing the national anthem every day, talk about how they're the best in the world and look down on the rest of the world, etc. Well, I
wonder who he's talking about.
to think that too before coming to Australia, but turns out it's more like a pride and love for Australia and how lucky they are to live here instead of a blind, almost religious kind of patriotism like the ones back in America. Aussies love their nation in a realistic way. They know how good they are in many aspects and how many things still need improvement, like the housing market and cost of living in general. And they will also criticize Australia when it's needed. Hey, actually the ones who are super critical about Australia all turned out to be Aussies because they know the love for your nation, and pretending that your nation can never do anything wrong is not the same thing.
So what Australia proved to me and many fellow Americans is that what we believe to be patriotic in America is actually nationalism in the eyes of non-Americans. And there is a better way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, my whole life I thought it was patriotism until, not that long ago. And I don't know, most Americans don't see it. They still see it as patriotism. But when you look at it from, I guess, from an outside perspective, or after talking to people from, different parts of the world, you start to realize, like, not as normal as we had been told it was.
Way to love our nation without putting the flag as a tattoo somewhere on our body.
But after everything I've said so far, did you find out the one difference in Australian culture that makes all the difference? Because I made it so obvious, you probably know the answer to it already. And that is all of the lovely Aussies. They are the true reason why people are willing to fly for days to visit Australia, because there's no place like Australia. Which is even more insane if you consider that when Australia was founded, the British sent a bunch of prisoners and convicts over here to help grow the colony. So my Aussie friends always love to joke about how Australia somehow went from being founded by criminals to the nicest bunch of people in the world. Now, I don't know how historically accurate that is. Their word, not mine. Feel free to tell me in the comments what happened in Australian history. And apart from that, Australia is one of those few places where you can still be friends with someone even though you have different political beliefs, and occasionally you would have disagreements, but you would still be friends at the end of the day. And with how many of my American friends literally stopped being friends after decades of being the best friend over some religious and political dispute, I'm just glad to see
Yeah, in recent years, the last 10 years, I've seen so many people stop being friends and families torn apart over political stuff. It's crazy. I mean, there was something on the news, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, where I think it was in Texas, a man and his daughter were talking politics, and I guess he supported the current president and the daughter did not. And I don't know how heated things got, but he ended up like shooting her. So it's wild. This place is crazy.
See that at least the same thing isn't happening to my Aussie friends.
And that's what I think everyone, especially Americans, can learn from Australia. And let me know what you think in the comments whether you're from here or not. But before you come here, you need to know the worst tourist mistakes.
But yeah, that was interesting. I definitely think the nationalism disguised as patriotism here is an issue. And I definitely think that the that hustle culture is like an issue because people they don't have time for anything besides work, it feels like. And especially with how expensive things are, like you have to work multiple jobs just to afford to live, and that's not even counting going out and having fun. So I just feel like there's more to life than working. Like, I don't want to get to 70 years old, 80 years old, if I get to live that long and be thinking that like I worked my entire life away. I don't want that. And I don't want that for other people. But yeah, that was interesting. Thank you for checking this out with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.